And hi, and welcome back to another conversation, a Kartzinel conversation, with me, your host. I'm Dr. Jerry Kartzinel. I'm a pediatrician. I've been working with children on the autism spectrum for 2.5, 3 decades now. It's been quite a journey. And as you know, children on the spectrum are really different. Look at your child or the one that you care for, and look at other children in the classroom or other adults, and they're all different. Yet they all have that same name, autism, whatever that is, right? And they manifest so differently, from the stimming behavior to their eating habits to their sleep to their moving their bowels. They're all so different. They really keep me working hard as a pediatrician, because of the fact that this isn't just another case of cough, cold, congestion, vomiting, diarrhea, diaper rash. These children have lots and lots of different intricacies that, well, affect systems. And the system that we're going to talk about today is language. You know, when I get the intakes for new patients, very often at the end it says, "What would you like us to do?" And I just want to hear my baby speak. I want him talking. I want him communicating. But he's also not sleeping. He's also only eating 2 or 3 foods. And very often I'll say, "Hey, if you ate just what your child ate every day for a month for the past year, how would you feel?" I said, "How can I get that brain to work properly when we have these issues that are not also being taken care of? They're not sleeping, they're constipated, they're getting sick all the time on antibiotics." "Yeah, I know, but I just want to hear his words. I haven't heard mommy yet. I haven't heard daddy yet." "I know, but we have to get that foundation working well, because, well, the brain is downstream of everything." What do I mean by that? I've had some conversations with psychiatrists, and they'll say, "What happens to the body below the neck doesn't really affect the brain." And I'll say, "Really? Haven't you ever tried a couple of glasses of wine? Don't tell me what goes on down below doesn't affect the brain." So we're trying to get the brain working. And when you think about language, it is very complicated. There is language of receptive language, hearing and understanding. Of course, the expressive language, the eye contact, being able to read if you're happy or sad or angry. These are all parts of communication. And that's kind of what we want, which involves attention, memory, the ability to recollect words, associate words like cat means fuzzy little creature, dog means a different fuzzy creature, cow, uh, being able to associate meanings to words. When my son was in speech therapy, I wasn't interested in the, "Okay, say hi, daddy, say hi, daddy." I wanted something organic, that when I came in to the house from work, he'd open up his arms and say, "Hi, daddy," and then make a beeline to me. That's organic. That's understanding all the complexities. "I've missed you, dad. You're finally home. I'm greeting you, dad. I want to give you a hug, dad." All those emotions, not just repetition. Though it's, you have to start somewhere, obviously, to get the words. And then, our kids get these diagnoses. My favorite, of course, is apraxia. Okay. Well, it's important. I mean, it is a Greek that means not working properly, the brain here. And when you think about it, when the brain works to develop language, it has to control the diaphragm, our breathing, the vocal cords, the lips and tongue and the mouth to form the words. Okay. We also have to say it loudly. My son would whisper. And I said, "Josh, I can't hear you." So it's that. And be able to enunciate clearly. So I have some children who talk as if they were hearing impaired, and they might be, but they talk like you can barely understand them, or they can speak robotically, or they can speak very loudly, or it takes great duress to get them to speak. We would say to my son, "Oh, great silent one, what do you want from the refrigerator?" And I'd open up the refrigerator because he wouldn't say anything. But if he comes to my office and I've got a needle and he knows dad's going to either draw some blood for more testing or give him something IV, all of a sudden, under that duress, where's mommy? I want to get out of here. What's wrong with my body? But other than that, boy, he wasn't going to speak. So there's a lot of different things going on in that brain that we have to capture and normalize, because if you've been around other children who are, as they say, neurotypical, they can't stop speaking. I mean, little girls, little boys, they want to tell you about their whole world and chitter chatter all day long about everything. And our kids also want to be able to communicate with you, but they can't. So again, it takes awareness, motor planning, memory, understanding, emotional regulation. They can't be anxious about it. They have to be able to turn their thoughts into something meaningful. So when I start speaking with the parents, I'll say, do we have any words? And sometimes I'll get single words. Sometimes I've got phrases. Not now, more please, let's go outside. Okay. Do they turn to their name? 50% of the time, 20% of the time, 80% of the time? Have they had their hearing checked? You can count on one hand how many times I've actually had a child with deafness, but it wasn't something new. Both parents were deaf. Okay, they can get autism too. Okay, so we had to work differently with that, but there's great hope, when the ENT sees them and says, oh, yeah, there's fluid behind the ears and the tongue is tied. And they go ahead and they put in tubes to drain the ears and they clip the tongues. And now they can hear and their tongues can move, and still no language. That's not it. Okay. It may have been a hindrance. I mean, obviously, you want to be able to hear, but they're not speaking because they have tongue tie. They're not speaking because they have fluid behind the ears. That brain is so complicated. The more you know about the brain, which we know about a grain of sand on a very big beach about the brain. We pretend to know a lot more, but we really don't. But there's certain areas that are definitely involved with development of language. There's Broca's area, Wernicke's area, place in the back of the brain called the cerebellum, basal ganglia. These are all networks that have to work together, attaching memory and meaning and texture and even the motor movements, all pretty complicated. We kind of take it for granted, but with the brain and nutrition, blood flow, mitochondrial function, the development of energy, immune regulation, excitation, inhibition, these are all things that we have to address. So, for example, this past week, I saw a child who only takes in Pediasure and chips. That's it. That's all they have. And that's all they've had for years. So I know that child is nutritionally depleted. Of course, we want them to speak, but wow. So then you get into the ARFID diagnosis, the self regulatory mumbo jumbo, but whatever it is, remember, as we've talked about previously, autism is a compilation of abnormal responses to everyday stimuli. Everyday stimuli being your bladder is full or your rectum is full and you have to go to the bathroom. For a 6-year-old or older, and younger too, the normal response is going to the bathroom in the bathroom. Okay. But these kids have an abnormal response to a full bladder. And of course, this little boy who I was just referring to on the Pediasure chip diet was still in diapers at age 8. So there's something wrong with the connectivity and how the neurohormones are working and the cell signaling. We have to get all of that working first. So I'll say, well, we got to get them pooping, peeing, sleeping, and eating before we can have a chance for getting meaningful language. So again, everything influences the brain, and then we give them to the speech therapist in this raw, unadulterated area of their life. They're just going there first. And we did the same with our son. speech therapy. I want to make the speech therapist look like a rock star, and he or she can have all the credit, how great she's making that child speak, how the recovery of language is in her hands. But I know if we don't prime the pump, if we don't get all of those other areas of their life under control, they're going to end up like my son, a year of nothing. And maybe like the children you are involved with. We've been doing this for a year. Or this whole idea that we give them 30 minutes of speech language a week at school, or we give them, 2 15-minute. That's not going to do anything. Okay. I wish it did. That way I wouldn't have to worry about it. I have to fix the underlying problems to make my therapists a whole lot more productive in what they do great. Okay. So that is our kind of concerns there. When we think about nutrition, um, these children come to me deficient in vitamin C, vitamin D, iron. Oh, he does eat well. He just eats chicken all the time, but he won't eat any vegetables. And I'm thinking, where is he getting his iron from? I can measure the iron. It's low. If it's low, we are not going to be thinking well. I can tell you that. We have to get those iron levels figured out. All right. So the other thing too is receptive language. Are we comprehending what we're saying? I have kids who can't speak, but you tell them to go get their shoes. It's time for bath. We're going to go for a car ride. We're going to go outside. It's time to eat. I've had parents say, oh, he or she understands everything in both of our languages, because I have a lot of bilingual families who speak 2 or more languages at home, and yet we can't speak. We can point, or we can't even point yet. Okay. So comprehension is very important. Echolalia, I get that a lot. Echolalia is repeating the same word over and over again. It's difficult to figure out what they're doing or why they're doing it. Is it a part of speech processing? My son was great at scripting. He can repeat things from what he's seen on his videos. Okay. And to this day, he can pull appropriate scripting. And unfortunately, I can do that now too, because I've been around it for 30 years. But he can script TV shows and use a phrase that he'd heard appropriately in a language, but you know how he said it and the cadence of it, where it came from. Okay. So scripting is not necessarily bad. They are forming words, they are practicing the diaphragmatic movements, the lip and tongue movements, all of that. It's just that they're not using it in a true communicative way or a natural way, meaning it could be communicative, but it's not still what we're looking for. Some of our children have very large vocabulary. They can label everything, which is just amazing, but they can't put 2 words together. They can label everything, but you can't ask them, do they want more? Or what did you do at school today? They won't list for you. Okay. So again, I have kids who have no language, who have a few words or a few phrases, have 1,000 words, and they know colors and numbers and shapes and everything, still can't talk. And then, of course, social timing. Are they appropriate in their language, in the appropriate scene? Having the right perspective of stuff. It's complicated. We take it for granted, especially when we hear these 4 and 5-year-olds having complete conversations about things, and they'll say things like, "Actually, how I think that should go is," and it's like, wow. I forget how natural language blossoms, and I love it it's so refreshing for me to see a child who's neurotypical, who hasn't been injured one way or another, and speaking and formulating ideas and abstract thoughts and ideas. It's just so much fun to see for me. Okay, so remember too, another form of communication with our kids is not necessarily with words, but behaviors. So when I have kids who are screaming, hitting themselves, falling on the floor, and people will be quick to say, oh, well, he or she's doing that because. It's like, well, how do you know that's because? You're just describing something that maybe you saw on Google or heard another parent say, but he or she might be communicating that she's in pain or she's not had enough sleep and she's irritable, she's cranky, um, or we're hungry. We want to eat, but we're only allowing ourselves to eat a little bit. Or the opposite, we can't stop eating. We're eating just way too much. So that's a form of communication too, usually just blown off, well, she's just being autistic. He's just being autistic. I really don't think most of the kids want to be irritable, cranky, short fused, run around stimming and screaming. I think they would really like to have a conversation and tell you about their world, how they're feeling, what they'd like. Okay, so therefore, like we've talked about in our previous conversations, we have to take care of the basics. If they're constipated, we have to help them with their constipation. Okay, we're not going to go into that today because we've talked about it. If they are nutritionally deficient, we have to help them become nutritionally well endowed, if you will. Okay, and if they won't take it orally because they won't open their aperture to new foods, that's where supplements come in. And yeah, I mean, I do put them on vitamin D and vitamin C, and we're going to be talking about that. Probably the next conversation we have is how do we get these kids speaking with the supplements that I have found helpful in our clinic here. But we have to take care of their sleep. So important. We have to take care of the sewer system, as I refer to it, getting them to clean out their bowels, whether it's diarrhea, fixing that end, whether it's constipation, fixing that, or the microbiome is all out of whack because of too many antibiotics or the wrong sugary foods, and I have to put them on antifungals or different antibiotics to kill the bad guys, and get their gut working properly. So now we're hydrated. We're remove the foods that could be harming the way they think, gluten, dairy, sugar, and maybe specific foods that they're sensitive to, like my son, soy and corn and citrus, okay, and dairy, of course, and gluten. I know it's a hard diet, but it is so helpful for 80% of my practice. So I don't want to underestimate that. But we're building a foundation for healing. Some of these kids come in with pica, which just means eating things that aren't food. They won't eat what's on the table, but they'll go out, like my son, and eat cat poop, okay, or plastic, or something horrific. It's like, here, I've got filet mignon for you, and you're out in the garden harvesting spider webs and maybe the spider to eat. That's just weird. Again, abnormal responses to everyday stimuli. These are things that just aren't typically done by children. And it's if they're deficient in something, that's probably what's driving it. Very often they'll eat dirt, they'll eat sand, they'll eat leaves. I know it's kind of weird. And if you have a child like this, you'll say, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what's going on. So I have to make sure that their desire to eat the wrong things isn't because they're iron deficient or they need more calcium. They need zinc, they need selenium. It's easy enough to replace. And thank God, very inexpensive when it comes to it. Just might be hard to get it into them. Protein malnutrition is a huge problem with our kids. I have kids who shun protein. They will not eat it. They just are what I call my carbohydrate junkies. They won't eat protein. So I have to find a protein blend that is colorless, odorless, and flavorless that they can put into their drink without knowing it and consuming that way. So I have to get the protein levels up because all of the neurohormones and enzymes are protein based. We break down the proteins, of course, to their bitty forms called amino acids, and then we rebuild them how we want them. So we have to make sure they're getting amino acids, omega oils like from salmon, avocado. Some of my kids love fish, and it's great. Wild caught. Some of my kids love avocado, whether it's sliced or in the form of guacamole, and that's great. Some of my kids, not a chance. So we have to make sure that they're getting omega oils as well. Sleep, we talked about sleep, really important. What we learn during the day is consolidated during sleep. So that is what we're trying to accomplish with getting them to sleep through the night, so that whatever they learn during the day, they're actually able to make memories that they can locate and reach. Very often, people who are not aware of our children autism will say that the language deficit is due to low intelligence. I disagree with that totally. Okay, and you would too, I'm sure. But believe it or not, there's some really weird myths out there that are perpetuated. Um, Kind of like the myth that, well, he's a boy and boys just lose their language typically at this age because they're motoring around. That means they're getting hyperactive and they're really getting crazy as far as activity goes, and that's why they're not communicating. It's not. It's not. You're right when you think about it. This is just it shouldn't happen this way. Okay, so it's not an intelligence issue. It also could be a fight or flight response to our world. We'll be talking about that more in depth. Are they having a perceiving certain things in their life as being a crisis, not being able to have access to their devices, not having access to going outside or bath time or whatever? It's a crisis. Mom talking is a crisis. Dad talking is a crisis. Making them sit in ABA therapy with hand over hand is a crisis. Well, what does the brain do during a crisis? It instructs the adrenal glands to release adrenaline, fight or flight hormone. Adrenaline turns off logic and reasoning. They're not going to speak. So the children who I work with that can communicate and have what they call attention deficit, they very often tell you, the harder I try, the harder it gets. Well, the harder they try, they're perceiving as a crisis, like math homework, and they're releasing adrenaline, and they take something that would normally take them 20 minutes to get through. It takes them an hour to get through. So we have to make sure that the anxiety is taken care of, addressed. And again, your child may not have anxiety. Like I said, these children that we take care of have a myriad of different things that I get to take care of, but they're different from child to child. So I have to kind of isolate, conquer, and divide, figure out what are the biggest issues, because the ultimate goal is developing full language. If the immune system is in an inflammatory state, that has to be taken care of, because if you have neuroinflammation, it's going to hinder being able to develop language. I'm just thinking that I've had kids who become very lucid and very communicative when they've got 104 fever from a flu. And the parents say, oh my gosh, when he or she's at her sickest, she is calm, she is focused, and she's able to communicate with us. But as soon as she gets well, we lose that. Also, it's a time when they're not eating too. So maybe some of the foods that we're doing are causing problems, or the immune system is dysregulated. And what it was doing when they're well, wiping out the ability to talk, it stops doing that because it's now fighting a disease. And then once the disease is gone, it acts mischievously again and messes up our language. Can't underestimate the food sensitivities that impair language development, like we talked about. When they're not eating, they're at their best. But I have kids who don't eat and they're still bad. So it's not just that. But in some kids, it is. Okay. Oh my gosh, she started speaking once we removed dairy and gluten from her diet. Really? I mean, we could have done this like 2 years ago. Why is this so hard for other doctors to say, hey, I don't know much about autism, but I've been reading, I've been hearing, I've been watching. Before you find your autism doctor, why don't you go gluten-free and dairy-free? How hard is that? But even today, if you get diagnosed at a major institution, they're not going to tell you about trying gluten-free, dairy-free diet. They'll tell you, oh, ABA therapy, 30 to 40 hours a week. Well, good luck with that, right? Another big issue for our kids is mitochondrial dysfunction. And we'll talk about that. That'll be another conversation. But mitochondrial dysfunction. So I have to address that too in our and our supplements. That's also a possibility as well. And there's a whole course of supplements to take for that. And of course, you've heard talk about leucovorin and cerebral folate deficiency and all. But these are all going to be very important as we compile what we're going to be doing next week when we talk about language and supplements. So there is a barrier for language. I think of the production of language as opposed to words. Language now, communication, is more like an orchestra. And you've got your wind section, and you got your string section, and you got your percussion, and your violin section might be doing great, but your percussions are a couple of beats behind, and your your woodwinds, I'm sorry, woodwinds are not blowing because they're exhausted because they haven't had sleep for 2 or 3 days. And now you don't have much of a musical piece that's pleasant to listen to. Same thing with our kids. If we don't get the whole orchestra working, you're not going to have much music to listen to. And that's kind of what we're at. So find the barriers: sleep, constipation, immune dysregulation, nutritional deficiencies, etc. Take care of those, and then we get to work on the things that can really push language forward. And you know what? That's what we're going to talk about in our next conversation. And I hope you'll join me. If these are podcasts that you enjoy, please push the like button and subscribe to the channel below so you won't miss the next one. And we'll be talking about many conversations. As you know, in autism, there's a lot of things to talk about. Until then, thank you very much for listening, and make sure you share this, and we'll look forward to seeing you real soon. Bye now.